Today we're talking all about advanced reservations at Disney World. This is day 4 of your 10 days to a better Disney World vacation. Hey everybody, welcome to the Go Inform podcast, episode number 12. Today we are talking about dining and FastPass reservations at Disney World, and I'm going to tell you why you need to know about this now, even if you haven't started planning your trip. So thank you for joining me on this day 4 of our 10 days to a better Disney World vacation. This is a big topic that I felt we kind of needed to address fairly early on in our 10-day set of episodes here, because planning ahead is really important at Disney World, and it's something that a lot of people don't know about until it's kind of too late. And if you're not in the know about it, then you might miss out on some of the things you really want to do. So today we're talking about a really complicated topic, and I've made it even more complex by combining both dining and FastPass reservations in this same episode. But the idea today is just to let you know that this is a thing. This is a thing that you need to be aware of and thinking about in your planning for your trip. And the dining reservations and the FastPass reservations both go along with your advanced planning that you're going to be making. And that's part of the reason that I just went ahead and put them both in today's episode together. Today's episode is not going to be every little thing you need to know about making these reservations, but it is meant to give you an idea of kind of when you should be thinking about these things and how to make a plan and some strategies to make it easier for yourself and not get totally overwhelmed with this part of your trip planning. Okay, so when we talk about making advanced reservations, let's talk about how far in advance this means. And the answer is it can mean really far in advance. And we're going to talk specifically about that in a couple of minutes, but we're talking about months before your trip begins. You have the opportunity to make reservations for your restaurants and for ride reservations too, FastPass plus ride reservations way ahead of your trip. So if you're listening to this and you are on the way to Disney World right now, keep listening because it's going to help you get some insight about maybe why you're having trouble getting into something place, but also some insights about how you may still be able to get some of these reservations if you're a little bit strategic in your planning. If you are just starting your planning, or if your trip is booked but it's still months away, then congratulations. Hopefully this will be timed just perfect for you and you can be right on schedule for making those advanced reservations. I should also mention that making these reservations is not required. You can totally just wing it if you want to. When you wing your trip and you don't have reservations, you just have to be ready to either wait longer for some stuff or just to not do some of the things that might have been on your list. So if you want to be really, really flexible with your planning and not have a lot of stuff booked, and that's the way you like to travel, totally fine. You can go ahead and do that. Just have the attitude that means you're going to have more spontaneity in what you do and when you do it, and just pack your patience with that because since there's such an opportunity to book ahead, a lot of people will do that and a lot of the spots will get taken early. So just know that you're not going to be able to just show up, especially at a peak time, without reservations and just walk into any of the rides or the restaurants that you were hoping to go to. This can also seem super overwhelming. By the time I'm done with what I'm going to tell you guys, you might be thinking, what am I doing? And some of you guys who are real planners are going to love this. So I want to speak to both of you. If you are someone who it's just like, okay, I figured out where I want to stay and when I want to go, and that's enough, then if you haven't already booked your trip, I recommend you use a travel agent to book your Disney vacation, because get someone who's a Disney specialist. A Disney travel agent will actually make these reservations for you. They don't charge you to do it. It's just part of their compensation. It doesn't cost you anything extra to use a travel agent either, you guys. So if you really don't want to deal with the hassle of making all these reservations, then use a travel agent and have them help you get this taken care of. And I mean, it will take so much pressure off of you, especially if you have a larger group that you're planning with. A travel agent could really make your life easier. So just keep that in mind. You don't have to do everything yourself, and you don't have to do all this stuff. But let's talk about what options you do have if you're going to plan ahead and make some advanced reservations at Disney World. Okay, so first of all, now let's talk about how far in advance we're really talking about. So there's two different things that we're dealing with here, and they have different schedules. So dining reservations at Disney World, and I'm talking about reservations for restaurants in the theme parks or in one of the hotels or in like Disney Springs or one of the surrounding areas surrounding the hotels. So basically, this applies to pretty much any dining, sit-down dining kind of restaurant that's going to take a reservation on the Disney World property. So not just the restaurants that are in the parks or in the hotels. If you are staying on site in one of the Disney hotels, you can make your dining reservations up to 180 days before the start of your trip. And this is also true, even if you're not staying on site at Disney World, you can still make a dining reservation 180 days before your trip. So when I was talking about advanced planning, this is serious. It's like 6 months in advance. So, and we're going to talk a little bit about how to sort of figure that out. But that is the kind of time that you can plan ahead by. So the advantage if you're staying on site at a Disney hotel with this 180-day window is that if you're staying on site, you can actually book your reservation beginning 180 days before your trip. That's from 180 days from the start of your trip. So if you're staying on property at Disney World, let's just say you're really going for it and you're staying for 10 days, you can actually make reservations all the way out for that entire 10 days, which if you think about it, that means it's really 190 days in advance of that last day of your trip. If you're staying off-site, you can book a reservation 180 days in advance, but that's it. So if you're staying 10 days somewhere else in Orlando, then it doesn't matter. You only get to book 180 days in advance. So every day during that window, that's 180 days before your trip, you're going to have to book each day separately. Okay, so hopefully that makes some sense to you. It is an advantage because guests who are staying on site are able to grab those bookings for there's some really competitive restaurants, and you can grab those bookings actually farther than 180 days in advance. And it actually gives you an advantage even over other guests staying on site if you have a long reservation, because most people staying on site are probably only staying, maybe 3, 4, 5 days. If you're staying longer than that, you can, book something in advance of most of the other people who are starting to make their bookings. So that's kind of the time frame we're talking about. Whether you're staying on site or you're staying off site, either way, we're talking about a really far in advance that you can start making reservations to eat. It is kind of funny to think about like knowing where you're going to eat breakfast 6 months from now. But that's, you have that ability when you're going to Disney World. Okay, so the other sort of reservation that we're talking about today is FastPass Plus reservation. These are the reservations for attractions in the parks. And if you're staying on site, this you can book 60 days before your trip. If you're staying off site, you can book 30 days in advance. And same kind of situation, if you're on site, it's 60 days from the start of your trip. So you can book your entire trip worth of fast passes all at once, 60 days out from your first day. And if you are staying off site, it is 30 days before the day you're in the park. So it's going to be every day you're going to have to go in and book for the 30 days out. So you don't get to book for your whole time if you're staying off site. You do it one day at a time, 30 days in advance. So this right here is a really nice perk for guests who are staying on site at Disney World. Yesterday in episode 11, I talked about where to stay when you go to visit Disney World. And this is definitely one of those pluses in terms of special things that you get if you stay on site versus staying somewhere else in Orlando. Having a 30-day jump on these ride reservations can really make a huge difference in being able to get onto some of the really popular rides. So we're going to talk about each of these things separately. Before we get too far into the nitty-gritty of it, one thing I really recommend you do is get a hold of an unofficial guide to Disney World book. The unofficial guidebooks have listings of every single restaurant, every single attraction in the parks. In terms of trying to figure out what your options are, that book, it's like the Bible. It's just got everything you need to know. So I highly recommend picking one of those up for your own, just for your own reference. I'll put a link to that in the show notes in case you want to click over and take a look at it on Amazon. Show notes today are at goinform.net/12. So you can hop over there, and anything else that I mentioned that I think I've got some other resources for, I'll make sure and put links to all that stuff in the show notes for you. Okay, so let's get down to how you make these reservations. The reservations for dining specifically, it's a lot. If you've ever used OpenTable, it's almost the same kind of interface. So you can make these reservations either online on the Disney World website or on the Disney World My Disney Experience app that you can put on your phone. You're going to want that app on your phone anyway because it's got a ton of other great things that it offers, and we'll talk more about that when we do episode 9 about getting ready for the parks. But this is how you do it. You just do it online. You can also call Disney to book these reservations, but for the most part, unless you've got a really big group or something, it's going to be more efficient for you to just hop on and do it electronically, either on their website or on your phone app. So why would you want to make a reservation anyway? Well, a couple reasons. One is just to know that you have a place to sit down and eat during the day. If it's a busy time of year, you'd be surprised, even though there are just hundreds of restaurants in the Disney World property, they can be really busy. And even for lunch, you can wait a long time. And having a reservation and knowing that you've got that spot can be a really not only time saver, but just a nice peace of mind. So just for your own planning and your own knowing that you can rely on having a decent meal, at least at some point in the day, there's a lot to that. Also, if you buy the Disney dining plan as part of your package, that includes meals. And if you pick the package that includes meals at the sit-down restaurants, you're going to want to make sure you have reservations so you can really use all the credits that are in your dining plan. You don't want to pay for a full service meal and then not be able to get into any restaurant. That would be just crazy. So if you're doing the dining plan, I really, really encourage you to make sure that you have enough reservations so that you know you're going to use all the credits for the full service restaurants that you're paying for in your plan. And the main reason to have a reservation is to get into the restaurants you want to eat at. So there's actually a lot of either really delicious restaurants, really interesting, fun character meals where you've got Disney characters coming around to the tables. You can meet the princesses at some of the restaurants. There are a lot of really neat experiences that you can have at a restaurant at Disney World. And some of them, everybody else wants the same thing. So one of the most popular restaurants is Cinderella's Royal Table, which is in the castle in the Magic Kingdom. They do a whole thing where you meet the princesses and you're eating in the castle. And I mean, what an experience, right? So if that's something you want to do, you need to be aware that there's probably 1,000 other people the same day as you, at least, who want to do it too. So that is one that people actually will get up early in the morning 180 days before their trip and book. And if you don't do that, you're probably not going to get to go to that one. But there's a whole bunch of other ones. There's a lot of places to meet princesses. There's a lot of really great fun restaurants that you can eat at and in the different parks and at the hotels. And if you do a little bit of research ahead of time, you can find a number of options that will work for your family, and you can get on here and make those reservations so that you know that you're going to get to have that experience. One of the things that I really recommend when you're looking at planning these reservations, we like to only do one reservation a day. We'd like to keep it pretty flexible when we travel to Disney World. We often hop between parks on the same day, and we like to have some flexibility in what time we eat and a little flexibility in where we need to be. But that said, one of our favorite things is to have a lunch reservation, especially if we're traveling in the summer. It's really hot, and by lunchtime, it's already really getting hot in the parks, steamy, just the humidity, and you get tired too from walking around the parks. And it's a really great time to have a break and get inside some air conditioning and sit down for a little while. So if you're looking at, should I make a bunch of reservations, like should I reserve every meal of the day? I don't really recommend that. I think you pick probably one a day is a good rule of thumb, and book that, and consider booking lunch and then doing something from a quick service, which is like, that's their term for fast food. But get some pizza or just do something quicker for dinner. You may find that this gives you more freedom in the afternoon and evening, where you can enjoy your morning in the park knowing you have a nice lunch break, and then have more flexibility later in the day because you don't have any reservations. Okay, with dining reservations, it's important to be aware of what park you're going to be in when you're making these reservations. So make your dining reservations near wherever you're going to be. This is something that if you haven't been to Disney World before, you could just figure out, it doesn't matter. I'll just run over. I might be in Magic Kingdom, but I'm going to go to Animal Kingdom Lodge for lunch and then come back. don't do that. There is a lot of distance between everything in Disney World, and especially between the parks. So a big part of this, and the reason I kind of rolled the FastPass and the dining into one episode, is that it all goes together with making a plan of where you're going to be each day. And that is that could be a whole podcast. We could probably have 20 episodes about how to make your touring plan and decide what your days at Disney World are going to look like. But what I'm going to suggest here, because we're talking about planning really far in advance, is at least try to sketch out a schedule of which park you think you're going to be in on which day of your trip. And then make the dining reservations in those parks or near those parks on the appropriate days. Stay flexible, because if you really want to go to Cinderella's Royal Table, but you can only get in there on day 5 of your trip, but that wasn't the day you were planning to go to Magic Kingdom, seriously consider making that your Magic Kingdom day and swapping it with something else. So you may end up making your touring plan somewhat revolve around your ability to get these dining reservations if you have someplace that you really, really, really want to go. And talking about how do you figure out where you want to go? So for the next 4 days after today, which is all logistical stuff, tomorrow we're going to go to the Magic Kingdom and do a virtual walkthrough. And then we're going to, on the next day, we're going to go to Epcot. The next 4 days are going to be tours of the parks. And I'm going to give you kind of some of my favorite things to do in each of the parks and an idea of what is there, where is stuff, and where are the restaurants that you might want to go to, and where are these rides, and what's in each park. So hopefully after you listen to those episodes, that might give you guys a better idea of where you want to, what's your priority? What do you really want to see? And how many days do you want to spend in each place? How do you want to split up your time? So stay tuned. I think those episodes are really going to help you. I'm hoping they're going to help you not only get excited for your trip, but also start thinking about how you want to lay everything out. A couple other tips about dining reservations. One, there is a cancellation penalty if you don't follow through on your reservation. So Disney will have your credit card on file. They'll either already have it because you've booked your hotel or anything else through them when you log in to make these reservations, or they'll ask you for it. And that is because they don't want last minute cancellations on these reservations. It doesn't really work very well if they allow people to book 180 days in advance and then they cancel it, at the last minute. Generally, the rule at Disney World is that if you're going to cancel a dining reservation, you have to do it before the day of the reservation. So just think of it as if you're going to cancel a reservation that's tomorrow, you need to do it by midnight tonight. And if you don't cancel it by then, they're going to charge you a penalty of somewhere, depends on the restaurant, somewhere between $10 and $25 per person that are on the reservation for canceling. So this can get kind of hefty. You only want to make those, you only want to do those last minute cancellations if it just you really need to do it. So make sure that you're not overbooking yourself to the point where you're going to have to make a bunch of cancellations, because even if you do cancel it ahead of that penalty time, that's just one more thing you're going to have to hassle with when you're on your trip. So if you're not sure, you can go ahead and make 2 or 3 a day. I guess you could book every meal right now if you want 180 days in advance and then drop some off. But if you're going to drop some of your reservations, do it kind of well in advance. So it's not something that you have to worry about. You don't want to get hit with those penalties. And it's usually unnecessary to wait until the very last minute to cancel. So just know that there is this penalty. Now, one really good side to this penalty means that people are going to cancel the night before usually. So if you don't have a reservation somewhere, that if there's some place that you really want to go and you haven't been able to get your reservation, try looking the morning of the day you want that reservation, because you may find that there's somebody who canceled it the night before at the last minute because they wanted to avoid the penalty. They canceled it in the middle of the, at midnight or whatever, or sometime that night before. And you may find a reservation opening up on the same day. This is a great way to score reservations. You can't always count on it, but don't give up. You may be on your trip and see a table open up that you want. So that's kind of the plus side of the penalty that they charge for cancellations. And one other tip that I just want to touch on here, I'll do a whole episode about this in a future episode, and I've also got a post written about it. But this is the trick of making a breakfast reservation before the park is opened. There are opportunities for you to go have breakfast in the theme parks before the official opening time in the morning. And this allows you to get into the park. You could get into the park basically an hour before the rest of the guests and go have breakfast and be first in line for really any ride. Generally speaking, you could be first in line for any ride in the park if you have an early breakfast reservation. And this is something that works whether you're staying on-site or off-site. On-site guests have the opportunity to get into the park early for extra magic hours, which I talked a little bit about yesterday. But if you're staying off-site, you don't get that. A breakfast reservation is one way that you can kind of get that VIP treatment. So I'm going to put a link in the show notes so you can read about this. We've done it before to get onto the Frozen Ever After ride, and we've also used it in Magic Kingdom to be first in line for the Seven Dwarfs Mine Train ride. It's a really good hack, and it's something that I will definitely talk more about in a future episode. The show notes to grab that is at goinform.net/12. So that's all I'm going to say about dining reservations right now. I hope I haven't just freaked all of you guys out, and I hope you're excited because now you get to start really planning your trip even farther in advance than maybe you were expecting. But yeah, just keep in mind that this is something that you can take advantage of that can really give you a jump on the crowd. It's one of the many ways that a lot of us make our way around the big crowds, especially during busy times at the parks. Okay, so we're going to transition now and talk about the other type of reservation, which is the FastPass Plus reservation. So FastPass Plus is an advanced reservation that you receive for an attraction in the parks. And I'm using the term attraction rather than ride because you can actually get a FastPass for a ride, but also for a show, fireworks seating. Sometimes you can get a fast pass for that. And even parades. Sometimes there's a fast pass available to have a guaranteed spot to watch a parade. So this is one of those things that Disney does to help the guests be able to not just spend all whole day long in lines. And FastPass Plus, really, if you don't make any other reservations, please make FastPass reservations. There is no reason not to. It doesn't cost you anything. It's just a matter of a little bit of planning ahead, and they can save you a ton of time waiting in line. And also, it's a way to know that you're going to get on a ride that you might not be willing to wait in line for otherwise. So basically, this reservation is a 1 hour window that you can go to the ride and you go in a special line. So when we're talking about the terms for Disney World on day 2, episode 10, I mentioned that there's two kinds of lines or queues for the rides. There's the standby queue and there's the FastPass queue. The FastPass is going to be a much, much faster way to get onto the ride. Standby means you just get in line and you wait, and no matter how many people are in line, it's just first come, first served. FastPass Plus line is going to bypass that standby line. Only people who have fast passes that are working at that moment are going to get in that line. And usually with a fast pass, sometimes you literally just walk through and you're first in line for the ride. Sometimes you have to wait a little bit, but it's usually like, even on a busy day, it's maybe 10 or 15 minutes to get on a ride with FastPass, where the line might be an hour or more. Sometimes at peak times, there are some rides that have over 2 hour long waits. And I'm sorry, but I'm not waiting 2 hours. It doesn't really matter what ride it is. I'd rather go and do other things in the park than stand in that line. So FastPass can keep you from being trapped in this super long line. There's a lot of strategy around planning these FastPass reservations, which rides you should get a FastPass for, what time of day to get your FastPasses, and all of that kind of stuff. I'm trying to keep it simple today, so I'm just going to say that the main thing is to make these reservations. If you want advice on which rides to reserve at what time, a really, really good resource is touringplans.com. I'll put a link to their website in the show notes. They are actually the publishers of that unofficial guide that I just mentioned. And they have a service. It's like a really cool computer program where you can put in the place that you're going to go and kind of what you would like to see, and it will actually tell you which fast passes to get and what time you should try to get them for. So check that out. They do charge a nominal fee for that. It's a subscription. It's like less than $20 for a whole year. And it's even cheaper if you own one of the unofficial guidebooks. So, it's so worth it. It'll save you a ton of time. And if you don't have a lot of experience with trying to figure out which rides you even want to go on, the Touring Plans website and their app, it'll help you tremendously with figuring this out. The way the FastPass Plus reservations work is that you can make 3 FastPass Plus reservations for each day, all in the same park. So you can't make a reservation for a ride in Magic Kingdom and a ride in Epcot and another ride in Animal Kingdom. Even though that's 3, that's your limit. Those are in 3 different parks. That's a no-no. So it will let you make 3 reservations that don't overlap, all in the same park for each day. Now, since they've rolled this out, that Disney World now allows you to get more FastPass reservations once you have used the first 3 up. So you actually can get more than 3 reservations on a day, depending on what time you're using these, and depending on how busy a day it is. Some really, really busy days, by the time you even get to the park, the FastPass reservations may be fully booked for the day pretty much anyway. But on most days, there is a chance that by late in the day, you might be able to pick up another FastPass and bypass the standby line on another ride that may have a long wait. Okay, so as I mentioned, if you're staying on site, you can book these reservations 60 days ahead. And if you're staying off site somewhere else in Orlando, you can book 30 days ahead. And when you go to book this, it's the same like the dining reservation. You're going to go on the Disney website or into the Disney World app. And by now, you're going to have a login and it'll know who you are. And you need to have If you're staying in one of the Disney hotels, you'll need to have your hotel reservation linked in your profile there. It's not hard to do. You probably will have already done this even before you get in there to make your FastPass reservation. But the system does need to know that you're staying in the hotel. So you'll need to have your reservation noted in there. And then you also need to have a park ticket in order to make FastPass Plus reservations. And that's whether you're staying in a hotel on site or anywhere else. You can't make FastPass Plus reservations without a valid park ticket. So this is one reason why it's really important to buy your park tickets ahead of time before your trip. And this is another topic we'll talk about on day 9 when we get towards the end of our 10 days here. But getting that park ticket purchased allows you to have access to the FastPass Plus system, so you can get those reservations made as soon as they're available to you. When you're making these reservations, one of my biggest tips about making FastPass reservations is don't book them for first thing in the morning. First thing in the morning is going to be the least crowded time in the parks. And that's the time of day that you can, for most of the rides in most of the parks, you can walk in first thing in the morning and get on even the most popular rides with a much lower wait time than it will be any other time later in the day. So if you book your fast passes in the first 2 hours of the day, that's going to be kind of wasting them, in my opinion. I think if you're just going to save a few minutes of wait time by booking a fast pass early in the morning, I think it's much smarter to use the fast pass for a time of day that's busier, because you're going to save a lot more wait time if you have fast passes for some time like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. In my experience, the busiest times of the day is after lunch, any time from about 2 o'clock sometimes until park closing. It depends on the time of year that you're there. But that mid-afternoon time especially is a really, really nice time to have fast passes and kind of know where you're going to be going. Going along with that tip about having a lunch reservation, it is really nice to kind of power tour first thing in the morning when the crowds are low and just use the standby lines to get on the rides. Then go have your nice leisurely lunch and then know that you have 3 big ticket rides that are saved for you that you can walk onto with your fast passes. Have those for the afternoon. And then if you're done with your fast passes by 4 o'clock or something, you can make another fast pass reservation for later that evening in that same park or in another park. So that additional fast pass that you can make after you have used the first 3, that can be in another park. So if you want to start your day in Magic Kingdom and end it in Animal Kingdom, then you actually can make your initial 3 fast passes for Magic Kingdom, use those up, and then make another one just on the app while you're standing in line. Using your last fast pass, you can make a 4th fast pass reservation for a ride in another park like Animal Kingdom. So there are some cool strategies around planning for a day, but that's the way that we like to tour with our fast passes. So, and just like with the dining reservations, this is the same kind of situation where it's a good idea to kind of have a rough outline of where you expect to be before you get on the app and start trying to book these FastPass reservations. A few other things that you really need to think about when you are making these fast pass reservations. One is, are the attractions that you're making the reservations for near each other, or are they way across the park from each other? Sometimes the fast pass system will pop up a schedule that looks really great. Like you have one ride and then immediately after that hour's up, you get another one. And immediately after that, you get another one. Check and see if that's really feasible for you. Do you want to walk all the way across the park and like zigzag around? Or do you want to be more orderly about how you are touring? You do have a lot of flexibility when you're using the FastPass reservation system to dial it in, especially if you're able to book 60 or it's really more than 60 days in advance if you're staying on site a few days. That usually gives you quite a bit of flexibility to schedule the different attractions in the order that you want them in. So before you get on the reservation system to make these reservations, have a sense of what is where in the parks and maybe have a little bit of an idea of what you'd like to do first. Now, that said, you may have to adjust your touring plan based on what's available. If you have a really hot ticket ride that you want a fast pass for, Flight of Passage in Animal Kingdom is probably the hardest one to get right now. If you really, really want to ride that one, then take a look and see when you can get a fast pass for it. And that's the time that you should take. And that's the time that you should go to that park. Much like with the dining reservation, if you have something that's like, you really must do it, plan the rest of your day or even the rest of your week around that one thing. It will make everything else kind of fall into place if you find the big must-dos first, then you can schedule everything else around that. Also, just know that fast passes are really easy to change if you're flexible. You can change your fast passes on the app at any time, even after the window has opened for that fast pass to be used. You can actually get in and change it to something else. It may not be the thing that you really want to ride though. So it depends on how busy the park is in terms of what other options you might have if you want to make a last minute change. But you absolutely can change those fast passes with no penalty or anything like that, except that if you're making a last minute change, whatever you're changing it to, you may have some limited options there, but it is possible to change fast passes basically on the fly. We do it often, actually, when we're touring. If we decide that we're ready to, we really want to get into a different part of the park that we're in, or we have something else that we want to do in between a couple of our fast passes, so we want to make one be a little bit later. That is something that's possible to do. Just don't always count on it, but know that you can try it. You can definitely try it. So I think that that's enough information for you right now about all of these different sorts of reservations. I know this is a lot. This episode is one that I just felt I had to do because when we're talking about having a better Disney World vacation, you have to know about these reservations. This is a jumping off point, you guys. Now you know the basics of how far in advance you need to book and a few tips. So now what you need to do is you need to figure out what you want to plan in advance and kind of how you want to do it and if you need help doing it. So hopefully this will give you enough insight that you can plan for to make some of those decisions before you get to the park. And if you have these reservations, this really, a lot of people don't even know about this. And that's why I do this whole thing, the podcast, the website, all of it, is because knowing this puts you ahead of like at least half the people that are going to be out there standing in the lines and getting grumpy because the lines are too long and the wait's too long and all of that. So hopefully by knowing about these reservations, you can take some action and you guys can be the ones who are just cruising through and having a good time and getting to sit down for lunch and really enjoy the parks and not being like totally overwhelmed by everything when you get there. And at this point, I would say, I'll just reiterate my advice before. Get a good guidebook, get some more information so you can make start making some decisions about how you want to tour, where you want to be each day. Keep listening, because tomorrow we get to go to the parks and we're going to talk about the fun stuff. We're going to talk about what it's like to be there and what you're going to see and do and eat, and even what you're going to hear and smell maybe. So please stay tuned for that. And if you really need help, my other advice is find a good Disney travel agent who can help you book this stuff. And that may be the best solution for you. And that's an absolutely fantastic decision if that's what's going to work for you. So keep that in mind. Thanks for listening today to the episode. Tomorrow will be day 5 of our 10 days to a better Disney World vacation. We're going to the Magic Kingdom, which is the most iconic theme park in the world, I think I could safely say. So we're going to talk all about that. I'm going to put in the show notes, I'm going to put a link to my Disney World Pinterest board. I've got a ton of information from all kinds of resources over there on that Pinterest board. I'm going to link that in the show notes so that you can take a look at that and also get some more tips about touring in Disney World and using those fast passes and all that kind of good stuff. And the show notes are at goinform.net/12. And I will see you tomorrow for Magic Kingdom. And I hope you guys have a delicious vacation.